Good morning. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Good morning. All right. Welcome to Ladies in Leadership. I'm Katie Fussenegger, Vice President here at the Kentucky Derby Museum. And believe me, we are thrilled to have you here today. Who's excited about being here today with fresh air, the safety of being surrounded by wonderful women, strong women, intelligent women, beautiful women, no kids? Who's excited about that? No worries about work, just time to relax and have a great time. So I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you. Are you ready and glad to be here today? That's more like it. What a strange year it has been. I think 2020 has had its challenges is the understatement of the century. But you know the thing about women? We just keep going. The way we do our work has changed, but we just keep going. The work hasn't stopped. The kids still need help. But tell me what, how many of you all have almost pulled your hair out from virtual learning? Me too, ladies. At the end of the day, the most important thing is we get it done. As a woman in a leadership role, I feel it extremely important to build other women up. So many important people before me, women have lifted me up. They have empowered me. They have invested in me. But our hope is today that you meet a new woman, bring them into your circle, exchange ideas, and learn from our amazing panel. And the most important thing for all of us today, have fun. That's why we're here. So before we get started, go ahead and raise your glasses. We're gonna have a toast to all women. Let's hear some noise for strong women all around the globe. Cheers to each of you. No clinking, because it's COVID. Let's get this party started. Now that you're seated, I'd like to welcome to the stage our host for Ladies in Leadership, Kentucky Derby Museum's Director of Communications, Rachel Collier Carr. Rachel is now a public relations guru, but before that, you might have seen her on television as a news anchor and reporter for more than a decade. She has won 3 Emmy Awards for her work as a journalist. She was honored as the best TV news reporter in the state of Kentucky, and she's flown in an F-16 fighter jet. She's a wife and mom to 2 boys. Please help me in welcoming Rachel.
Thank you, Katie. All right, so good to see you all. As Katie was saying, fresh air. It's just good to be out and be around people. All right, well, before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. This event is powered by LG&E. We could not make this happen and pull it off without support from LG&E, so thank you to LG&E. We also want to thank the U of L College of Business. Any U of L grads here? Raise your hand if you went to U of L. All right, that's a good little show out there. All right, we've got Crazy Zen podcast over here. They have been interviewing our guests, so you may want to check out their podcast in the coming weeks. They're going to have some more content from our wonderful panelists. We also want to thank Kendra Scott for donating beautiful jewelry to our lovely panelists. I'll be giving those gifts to you all afterwards. You'll have some beautiful bling bling to wear from Kendra Scott. Liz Richter, if you haven't gotten your picture back here on this mural, artist Liz Richter, where are you? Wave your hand. There she is in the back. She painted this beautiful mural. So make sure you get a picture, tag us on social media. We'd love to see it. We want to also just thank all of the vendors who are here as well. And today's woman, our media sponsor. So round of applause for all of those who are contributing to make this event possible. All right, and with that, we are ready to turn up the jams. I've told these ladies they got to boogie their way on into here. So we'll see how good their dance moves are. Let's get the jams going. We have some music so we can get them in here. Let's make some noise. All right, first we have Donna Barton Brothers. Donna is an NBC sports reporter, former jockey who retired in 1998. All right, Donna. Now we have Tawanna. Tawanna, actually. She is fluent in French. But in Tawanna, we have Natalia Martinez, Bishop. She's the founder of entrepreneurial service organization Story Louisville. She never skips dessert and dislikes exercise. All right. And last but not least, we have Peggy Stevens, the world's first female faster favorite chaser. Woo! Get it, girl! All right. All right. Awesome. Okay. Let's switch seats with you. All right, ladies. Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you guys. Something funny's already happening. Something funny's already happening. Okay, you know what? I'm going to do something a little different. Before I ask you all questions, I want to get to know our audience for a minute. So a little audience poll. Who is pretty fresh out of college? Maybe say the last 2 years or so. Okay, don't be shy. We've all been there. All right, who in the audience has maybe less than 5 years work experience? Okay. How about 5 to 10 years experience? How about 10 to 20 years experience? More than 20 years working. All right, we've got a good group here. All right. Who owns their own company? Who wants to own their own company? Okay. Who has switched career fields more than once? More than twice? More than 5 times? Okay. Just wanted to get to know you guys a little bit better so we know who we're talking to, right? All right, well, want to get to know these ladies too. So I want to ask just a real easy question first, and just pop in, whoever wants to go, just shout it out. What was your very first job?
Wendy's, and it was awesome because I thought I was so rich. I made $24,000 a year, but I worked like 24 hours a day, so I never had time to spend it. And I ended up with $8,000 in the bank and thought I was rich.
I was actually a camp counselor at the YMCA, and it was a high school position, and they assigned me to the 12-year-old boys. So that was a sign of things to come for me in working with men in my career. Sit down.
That's also hard to talk, but I was a dishwasher at Applebee's when we first came to this country, and at the same time I worked the third shift at UPS, which is how I got my degree, but I also thought I was rich. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Donna.
Well, this will come as a surprise to no one who knows me, but my first job was on the racetrack. So probably, you know, like my mother was really good about, she would give us $5 a week allowance during the school year, but during the summer we got no allowance. So we wanted money from about age 9. If we wanted money, we had to go to the track in the morning or get some sort of job. And for us, the easiest way to work was with the horses because that's what we knew. And so, yeah, from about age 9, I worked at the track.
What's it like working in a man's industry?
Well, my mother was one of the pioneers. So she was one of the first half dozen women to be licensed in otherwise male dominant sport. And thank you. And so I didn't really see it that way. My older sister worked at the track. My little brother, who was 360 days younger than me, so we're like Irish twins, my best friend, also worked at the track. And so it was just where all my friends were. And it didn't feel to me like a man's industry. So when I came up through the ranks in that industry, to me, it never felt like a man's world. It felt like my world.
Amen. I love that. Peggy, what about you? Peggy, you're in the bourbon industry, and that is, you know, that's a man's world too.
Yeah, and I have to say it's interesting because I think, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but probably my greatest superpower is that men always underestimated me.
Yeah.
And at the time it offended me, right? A long time ago, but it actually turned out to be my superpower because, you know, even simple things like, well, she'll never be able to carry a case of whiskey into that event, or, you know, like strength wise, or, you know, stamina, you know, oh, well, she can't go out to the bars with us late at night and talk to clients and everything. Oh, I hung right with them. And so it was always that when they began to underestimate me, that something clicked with me and it made me turn on my power even more. And that's what I think unlocked my career.
So Peggy, you and I are at about the same size and I can hardly handle alcohol. How do you do it?
Well, you know, practice makes perfect. And I have practiced my heart out on this stuff. So, you know, that's the other thing too. Great advice from a man who became a very dear friend of mine. And you know, I said, gosh, you know, I don't want to always have to drink, you know, a lot of whiskey when we're out with the guys because I have to go home. I have kids the next day. I've got, you know, and he said, Peggy, here's the golden rule. Drink the first, sip the second, decline the third.
I like
and I
that.
have followed that rule because no good happens after midnight.
No, ma'am.
Tawanna, when I saw you this morning, she was on her second mimosa.
I heard 1 something Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, something Mississippi floor. That's what I learned. Turn it down on the third. Who told?
Now, who out here has been up to our new Right to Ride exhibit this morning? Raise your hand. Okay, you're gonna have to go check it out. So our Right to Ride exhibit kind of just goes in line with today, all about women. It's our exhibit featuring the amazing trailblazing female jockeys who paved paths for generations of female jockeys to come. And this lady right here is featured in there, as well as her mom. So pretty cool.
Thank you for that. But I am honestly going to say right now, and you're going to hear me say it again later, I don't consider myself one of the pioneers because my mother, and I think Diane Crump's over there. Is Diane Crump here somewhere? Did I see her?
I don't think she's here today.
Not here yet. Okay. So my mother and people who, she started in 1969. The first year they were allowed to be licensed was 1968. And really, that was at the end of 68. So it wasn't really until 69 that women really started to ride races. My mother would fight at the drop of a hat if any of the men intimidated her at all. So she got this reputation that sort of preceded her, and men were literally afraid of her because she would say, how can I lose? If they beat me up, they beat up a girl. If I beat them up, they got beat up by a girl. Like, I've got nothing to lose. So I said to my mom once, like 10 years ago, I said, Mom, you know how you always said that about me? She said, yeah. And I said, did it ever occur to you that like most people don't fight because they're afraid they'll get hurt? And she paused and went, no, that never occurred to me. And so I wouldn't have done that. Like, I'm not a fighter. And also I'm a natural lightweight. There's a lot of women who are in that exhibit who really had to fight their weight and they had to fight the male bias. And I wouldn't have done those things. And so I am indebted to the women who went before me. And I think we all need to remember that we're standing on the shoulders of so many women in this 100-year anniversary of the right to vote, and also the 50-year anniversary of Diane Crump's first ride in the Kentucky Derby.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, while we're talking to you, I love the story that I heard recently about how you got regularly riding for D. Wayne Lucas. So D. Wayne Lucas is one of the all-time greatest trainers, okay? And I love the story of how you approached him. I mean, she got this from her mom, I think, this confidence.
This is a story of false bravado, but you know, you fake it till you make it. And we've all heard that, and this is how you do it. And so I got to Kentucky in 1993. I started riding in 1987, and I'd always wanted to ride in Kentucky. I actually went to high school here, but it's a really, for those who aren't familiar with horse racing that much, there's Kentucky, New York, and California. Those are the 3 dominant areas of the country. And so I was a little intimidated about the whole thing. So opening day at Keeneland is my first day to ride in Kentucky, and I've got 4 mounts. It's in the fall of 1993, and I won on 3 of the horses. And so I won 3 races. I had a 2nd place finish. Nobody else won more than 1 race, which made me the leading rider, right, for that day. So I went to my agent and I said, hey, I want to find out where Wayne Lucas is. I need to go talk to him. And he said, Donna, Wayne Lucas isn't going to ride us. And I said, I didn't ask you for your opinion. I asked you to go find out where Wayne Lucas is because I want to ride for him. And so he found out what barn he was in. And so I went to his barn and he was standing there talking with Todd Pletcher, who was his assistant trainer at the time and is now a really well-known trainer in his own right. And so I waited, stood off to the side till they were done. And so when they were done talking, he sort of waved me over, and I walked up to him and I shook his hand and I said, "Hello, Mr. Lucas, my name is Donna Barton." I said, "I won 3 races here yesterday, which makes me the leading rider. And I know you always like to ride the hot hand, and right now that's me. So I was pretty sure you were going to want to meet me."
Yes. I love that.
So he laughed and said, "Well, it's nice to meet you, Miss Barton, and I will watch you ride." And I did end up riding quite a lot for him. Not that day, not that week, but eventually.
That's great. That's great. Natalia, let's talk to you. Entrepreneur, you know, how did you take a big leap of faith to say, I have a dream, I have a goal, and I'm going to go for it? How did you take a big leap of faith?
So it didn't quite start as bold as that. It started with me becoming a parent, right? When I became a parent and they put that child in my arms and I looked at him and it was time to go back to work, I was like, nope, I'm not actually doing something I enjoy. How do I look at this child and say, go be the best version of yourself and do all the things? And I'm not doing that for myself. So I had to start really thinking through, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to do with my life? And honestly, for the first 5 years of my entrepreneurial career, it was more about replacing my income and being able to be home. It was about hustling and making ends meet and making it work. So I was a creative entrepreneur, as a photographer. I had a lifestyle business that was doing well. I considered myself successful, and I should have stopped there, but I didn't. And so then in the process, I think this entrepreneurship had kind of happened to me in a way. You know, in the process of meeting creatives, meeting other people in their own path, you know, I ended up opening Story and creating this space for other entrepreneurs to come in and sort of collectively bring the city of Louisville, you know, forward in innovation and whatnot. And what I started seeing is that women, people that look like me, people of color, minorities, were, you know, struggling with specific issues here. And I decided, you know, this resonates with me. This is a mission that I can, that I really, this is something I really want to get behind. And then you start not sleeping and being obsessive about it. And as you probably know, Tawanna, where you're just like, okay, this becomes your North Star. And, you know, I think the one thing that I will have to say for myself is that at no point did I doubt myself that I could do it. And it was never a confidence issue. It was never, I'm not qualified to this. I'm really not qualified to do this, by the way. I mean, I went to business school, but it's not the same. You know, you can't take yourself out of the race before the race starts, right? And it's just going for it and starting it, and thinking of it as, if you don't start the thing that you want to start, that's like burning in your belly, that's not allowing you to sleep at night every night, what are you depriving the world of? Like, what are you holding back that somebody else could be benefiting from by doubting yourself or waiting until it's perfect, which is our typical MO as women, right? So just going out there and starting it and doing it. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question? You know, I'm
Absolutely.
an interviewer also, right?
Of course, go for it.
So once you started using that creative outlet, do you feel like it really gave yourself space for the creative energy to start flowing?
Absolutely. I think what it is a muscle. In a way, in the same way that you go to the gym, if you go to the gym, you know, it's a creative, it's this muscle. It's not just a creative muscle, it's a confidence muscle too. You're gonna screw it up the first time, probably, but you sort of find this little bits and pieces of like, I did this well. And it didn't hurt that bad when I fell off the horse. It didn't hurt that bad the first time I got up and, you know, I was completely smashed the night before and I had to get up. And, you know, like you just sort of start seeing that it isn't that when you do fail, it's just not that bad. You just get up, and when it's utterly impossible, you're like, okay, what is the next right step? What, like you look at the elephant and you're like, how do I bite this in smaller pieces? And what is the next right step? And all of a sudden it's not as overwhelming and you can just do whatever. So, you know, I did the first thing, I did the second thing, and I was like, what else can I do? And let me launch a software company. Like, no, you don't know how to code. You don't know how to do any of these things. Let me create a bold goal of closing the gender GDP gap by 2035. And for me, I have no business doing that, but that makes it my business, right? If we wait for the people whose business it is to do those things, that's never going to happen. So just go out there and do the thing and see what happens.
I love your perspective. Who out there has maybe a side hustle or has something that has that fire in you? You have something that you want to do that keeps nagging at you, as Natalia was saying, keeps you up at night. Tawanna, can you add, how did you get after that? Was it a nagging feeling for you? And what steps did you take to go after what you wanted?
So I want to answer that, but I want to say something because, perspective is so important. And for the ladies that are listening, one of the earlier questions that was asked, there were two different answers. One was, I didn't see being a woman as a challenge. That just wasn't my perspective. That's not what I saw. And then you had the perspective of, they doubted me, right? And I think what is really profound as I sit between these two women and I hear that is that, but both of them were right. And so everybody's lived experience is different and their way of perceiving it is different, but it doesn't make it wrong. And because of where we are in our country, that to me was profound. Because just because her experience was different and her experience was different doesn't mean that that experience wasn't right. But now I'll get to the question.
I love that, Tawanna. Thank you.
Oh, gosh, birthing dreams. We as women, some of us, I should say, we grow up with this desire to be a mom. And that desire to be a mom, we go through so many different phases once we finally conceive. We go through the nesting period. We go through the, what is the name going to be? And we are hell-bent on being the best mom that we could ever be, right? I think of ideas that are game-changing, like being a mom to that idea. And not giving birth to it is not an option. And so for the first time in my entire career, I almost decided to abort an idea. And I use the word abort because sometimes you have to meet people where they are to help them understand how grave it is to abort an idea that we need and that has been planted in you to grow. And I walked out of my office after telling someone who asked me, please don't do that right now. This is what we're doing. And I thought, you know what? I got a lot going on. And I have been pregnant with this idea for 2 years. So maybe it's time to abort it. And I walked out of my office and I sat down with a young female, Black female politician. And I said, you know, what we were going to talk about, I've got to switch gears because I've just made the decision to abort it. Now, I didn't say abort at the time, but what she said later made me put it into that sort of framework. And she looked at me and she said, why would you not give birth to something you've been pregnant with for 2 years? Whoa. Whoa, right? And I had to sleep on that. And so I woke up the next morning to call the man that asked me to abort my idea to say, I can't do that. And he then said, I want you to know that I was going to call you because I felt it in my spirit too. And so today we have Jedi, for those of you that don't know, GEDDI.org. And this one birth has sprinkled so much in driving unity in our city, in our state, and in other places. But imagine, and this, I want to double down because this isn't to make a person feel bad about any ideas or decisions, but it is to help you understand our role as women as being mothers of not just people, but of ideas that change our nation. And so when I get an idea that just will not, I go ahead and I give birth to it.
All right, who's giving birth? Who's gonna be giving birth? Now, what would you say, anyone up here jump in, if you have that idea, how do you make a plan? How do you take it from an idea that's, you're sitting on, maybe you are self-doubting, well, I don't have the skills, or I don't have this, or where do I even start? Where can someone start?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, well, I know, I was just going to say that, I help a lot of companies ideate. And I pass that word on, ideate, because that's exactly how you have to think about what's in your head. It's creating your own personal war room. And I call this the war room because it's in your house, it's in your privacy, and you might have so many things spinning in your head as far as thoughts and ideas, and but get it out of your head and put it on paper. And buy those big Post-it note, sticky boards, and start thinking in buckets and categories. It might be finance, marketing, the purpose of it, the mission of it, and just little by little, eat the elephant one bite at a time. Because the better it's thought out, the more you have taken it through filters in strategy, the more all of a sudden, before you're finished and all those Post-it note pads are filled up, you've got your business plan to write, because it's all there. And I think the problem that women have is that we're freaking busy, and we give so much to so many that we leave very little precious time to our own thinking. And so that's why I say create your war room. Create the ideas and put them on paper and compartmentalize it. Maybe you have your day job, but your war room's there, ready, willing, and able to help you.
I love that whole war room thing. I'm gonna have to make me one of those. But I actually loved what you were saying, Tawanna, about birthing, because it really is exactly like birthing something or someone. I'm sorry. I wanted to say that I also feel like it's important to understand that ideas aren't yours. And I know this is kind of a weird concept, but I think personally that ideas come as part of ideas. Think of it as their own separate being, which is why I love the analogy of birthing. They will come to you and they will inhabit you. And if you don't do something, there's no action taken, they will move on. Have you ever met somebody that's like, oh, I thought of Spanx before Sarah Blakely did, and I was totally gonna do that. Someone who was gonna create a product that was already in the market. Ideas move on. So if you sit on that for too long, it's gonna leave you, trust me, because I also created Plated and Blue Apron and a whole bunch of other stuff before I did the thing I'm doing. So I actually have a bad ideas notebook that I keep in my purse. You use your phone. So anytime I have a thought, I'll jot it down, whether it's something completely random or something that's intentional. And entrepreneurship is a muscle. So sometimes you're driving on the street and you're like, it would be great to have this brick and mortar here, or it would be great. So start creating a muscle, a habit out of just putting random thoughts and ideas on there. The second thing I would say is everybody approaches ideation differently, right? I am a shower thinker. So I think a lot in the shower. I have long hair, so I have time, right?
Do you sing in the shower too?
Well, it depends on the day, but yeah, I mean, it takes me a while, so I'll be sitting in there thinking about things. Or if you're like a person that likes to take walks or long baths or whatever, don't discount those ideas. Write them down somewhere. And then I think lastly, we have this thing in the tech world called MVPs, a minimum viable product. I think, again, as women, we want to take this thing all the way and have a business plan written out before we're ready to show anyone. Sometimes it's a shame thing. Sometimes it's a thing of like, we want to validate someone to validate us that we're doing something. Don't have the business plan. And tech is the opposite. It's like, what is the minimum you can do to prove that this concept is needed and possible, and then get feedback from your customer, and then go build it, right, and flesh it out. So, because it's about being quick and being fast and being first to the bat, right? So I kind of straddle both worlds a little bit. I am a person who enjoys community, and so I like to talk about my ideas, you know, with people whose opinion actually is important to me. Don't go telling your husband about it, because they're gonna, well, maybe if you have a great supporting husband, but you know, it's probably gonna get shut down a couple of times until you feel like you're ready. But talk to people whose opinion really matters to you, mentors, advisors, people in your social circle that you think could help you propel that idea forward. On the other hand, there are people who don't like doing that and rather have created a space of their own where they can work it out themselves. However that process looks like for you, I think just the whole point is getting out there and just getting to work and doing it, and just getting your hands dirty. So,
can I add on here? Yeah. Two things, a different way of what Natalia shared about ideas. Not only are ideas not yours, you don't own words or actions. So if someone creates something similar, becoming upset and angry is such wasted energy because you don't own that. You don't own that. I'll give an example. I started the Derby Diversity Business Summit, right? And after 3 years of it being successful, another young woman started an event and it had the word diversity in it. And when I tell you, my phone with my email ringing off the hook, and I am like, did she like take my website down? Like, did she change founder of DDBS to her name? I said, what is going on? They're like, no, she has an event and it says diverse in it. I said, baby, Tawanna don't own the word diversity. And so if she's doing it, that means that I've done something right. And she is now, the work that I'm doing is beginning to live on, because the end game was for there to be more diversity. So this isn't a bad thing, but you would have thought she took my whole website down. So that's the first. The second, Natalia and Peggy mentioned ideation. So I'm not going to tell you guys my journey here this morning, but it's funny as hell. And I sit in the car and I thought to myself, I've been doing so many Zooms that I guess I thought it was going to be easier today to pull this off. And then I really started thinking, well, damn, Tawanna, it's only 8:30 though. Back before all of this, people were holding breakfasts that started at 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning. And I said, and whose idea was that? That was men, okay? Why in the hell would a woman plan a meeting at 6 a.m.? We got kids, lashes to put on, hair to dye, laundry to wash. No. So I said, oh, okay. We've been letting them plan a lot of things that we've aspired to. I will never again in my entire life accept a meeting at 6 a.m., nor will I get up thinking I need to read a newspaper at 6 a.m. If I choose to, I will. But that's why I say it's going to take women of color and white women to fix a lot of this stuff going on, because that's just crazy. Who schedules a 6? No.
She's like, I'm done.
No.
Well, to one thing that you were saying, I was about to go that direction and talk about catty women. Who in here, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but has encountered in the workplace dealing with like a catty woman? Okay.
Can we lift
I think we all have. So this event is all about empowering women, mentoring, lifting up. Donna, I don't know if you want to share the specific story, but how have you dealt with that? How did you deal with it?
Well, I think the only thing that you can do with that is just keep doing what you're doing. So when I first started riding, it was in Birmingham, Alabama, as a professional jockey. And I had the apprenticeship there. And they had a racetrack at that time, Birmingham Turf Club. It was in 1987, before some of you were born. And, anyway, I had some success, not right away. I mean, I didn't win my first race, but I worked really hard. So I had a job that I worked in the morning, and as soon as I got done with that job, galloping horses for a trainer, then I would go get on as many horses as I could for free, trying to work my way into barns. And so after I won a few races, there were quite a few female jockeys riding there at the time. And one of the female jockeys said to me that Connie said the only reason why Donna Barton wins races and people ride her is because she's cute. And I said, okay, that's nice. I'm glad she thinks I'm cute. However, I noticed that when I'm at the track at 5:30 in the morning, I've never seen Connie there. And I noticed she doesn't get on nearly as many horses for free in the morning as I get on. And so I was able to just go, you know what, Connie's jealous, and that's okay. She can be jealous. She's jealous because I've had some success, and I'm gonna feel blessed and grateful for the success, and I'm just gonna keep doing what I do, and I'm gonna ignore that. And I think for me, that was the best way to handle it.
Great. Peggy?
Yeah, I was going to say this is a very easy answer for me, because looking back, across my life and my career, and running into any woman who might have been catty or competitive, or even female bosses that may have tried to sabotage me or whatever. Now I can look back with pure perspective and say the problem that they ever had with me actually had nothing to do with me. It was their world, their energy. And all I can do is bring my energy to the table and be the best person that I can possibly be. And so I developed, I guess some people call it thick skin, I call it Teflon, where things really slide off of me or bounce off of me, because I'm not saying that I don't take feedback seriously, because you have to be fearless on good feedback, when you're in the work world and you have your evaluation and things like that. But when you're, we keep talking about spirit up here, and your instinct and your spirit guide, call it your spirit guide, whatever you want to call it. But when you're talking to someone and you might have that ill feeling and you don't really know why, they haven't really done anything yet, but it's just not good energy, or you meet somebody and you click for the very quick, minute. And so those are the things that we have to hone in on, is perfecting our instinct and perfecting when to, battle and when to kind of lay back and let things roll. So again, those moments almost don't have anything to do with you.
Preach, Peggy, preach. Peggy, I clicked immediately with you because you're an animal print, which is my favorite color. Now, on the flip side, what about women who are lifting other women up? Do you have a woman in your life that you can think of and share with us, and how they helped you? It was the complete opposite, but they wanted to see you succeed.
I have. And it's sad that it's emotional when it happens, right? Because you would think if it was the natural order of things that it would just be normal to have a woman lean in. And I have in abundance, actually, with women that have done so. And watching, what I think I love about it is that there's no specific age, or there's no specific socioeconomic status, or there's no specific race. There are just good women that exist. But I also want to share this, because I think it's important off of the back of the conversation that was had. And I actually call women that trip up other women or tear other women down, I think of that as a crab in the barrel mentality. And what you need to understand is that woman is operating from a position of lack, a position of scarcity, a position of fear, that you are better and that you are going to exceed her. And the reality is, I tell women all the time, if she gets there first, it doesn't matter. If she gets there second, it doesn't matter. The reality is that she got there. And most women who have been pushed by other women, when we get there, we're gonna pull the rest of them along, right? So that crab of a barrel mentality, we have to recognize it. And when you recognize it, it changes you from being angry. Because I have had women that they made me angry because they hurt me, because I wasn't trying to do anything wrong. I was trying to do what I felt I was blessed with, what my gifts were. And you tripped me up and sometimes smeared my name in the process. But what I learned later, when I learned that they're operating from a scarcity mentality and out of fear, I was no longer angry. I actually, at that point, prayed that they would end up with a mindset of abundance like I've been able to do. So I think that's important. And I say that because sometimes you will come across a woman who you want to help you, who you would wish would mentor you. But unfortunately, along the way, her hand has been bitten many of times because she was trying to help those in a position of lack or in a position of a scarcity mindset. So she may not be willing to do so quickly. That does not mean that she doesn't want to. It means that her wisdom has taught her to, what do they say, hire slow and fire fast. She wants to take her time. She needs to get to know you. She needs to get to know that you have an abundance mindset. And once she's more comfortable in a room with women with an abundance mindset, she will open up all of her jewelry boxes. And that is the beauty of encircling yourself with women that have an abundance and mindset. We're not afraid to share. That's the thing. When you have an abundance mindset, you want more. You want people to do better. You want them to have more, because the more that we all have, the more that we can do. So it's important to understand, to be able to recognize it, because if you can't recognize it, you really will think that she's just out to destroy you. How many times have we felt that way, right? She is out to destroy me. No, she sees your brilliance and she sees your potential, and that scarcity mindset, she's afraid that you're going to conquer and leave her behind. So it's recognize it, check it. I'm not saying check her, that's your decision if you feel so comfortable to do so, but move on and understanding that she's not ready. She's not mature enough, she doesn't have an abundance mindset enough, and she doesn't have what has been planted in you to get to that next step. And for those women in here that have a scarcity mindset, the young ladies, listen, I adore these at this table to the right, and I'm terrible with names and faces, so if you see me out and I get anything wrong, understand that I got a lot going on up here. But they asked me, what words of advice would you give? Like, what's your last thing? Hate is such a weak emotion. I'm going to say it again. Hate is such a weak emotion. And I told women all the time, keep it real with yourself first. You've met that woman that you immediately didn't like and you knew nothing about her, but you didn't like her. Recognize it as hate and check yourself. Nobody knows but you, right? And even if that checking of yourself takes a week, work on it. Because there's a lot of women whom I adore today because I was hating, that feeling came in. She was too cute, or she was too this, or she was too, why are you hating on her? Right? Check it. And now I adore them because we're all human and it's possible for something negative to creep in. It's up to us to kick it out.
Tawanna, am I one of those women you adore?
I adore you, Peggy. Adore.
We've known each other for a little while now, so I just want to make sure.
Let's talk about hiring for anyone out there who maybe is looking. What is the number one thing that you look for when hiring someone, if that applies to you?
I'll go. Is that okay? Okay. So I think that, and I'm weird, I run these companies that are sort of innovative in many ways, and one of those ways are hiring process as well. And by the way, I work with, all of our employees are women, except for 2 of them. So we mostly hire women, and it just happened to happen that way, even though I'm dying to hire a white straight male, just so that I can diversify a little bit, but they just don't want to work for me. I guess, I don't know. But you know, for us, the process is reversed, which is interesting, right? Like I am actually having to diversify by hiring straight white males. I think that when you put your company out there in a transparent way, it attracts people that identify with your values and the values of the company and so on and so forth. So for us, mostly it has been about the people that made, like, for some reason, the universe works in weird ways. So a lot of the times when we made this very strategic hires, they have happened with the right timing, someone reaching out, whether it's like literally on social media or LinkedIn, or a cold email saying, hey, I have this skill set. I love what you're doing. Let's talk. Let's create a relationship. And I am very open to that, because to me, that signifies you are hustling. You have the initiative. You are a self-starter. And I'll talk to you. I'll give anybody 30, 45, 50 minutes of my time or whatever, and let's grab a coffee, right? or lunch. And so a lot of our prospective hiring has happened that way. We've moved people from Chicago here. We've moved people, we have people in Indiana. We have people now in Iowa. So it's one of those things where if you identify a company that you truly identify with, and their values resonate with you, just reach out. Like, don't worry about it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Start a relationship with the founder, with whoever it is. Now, if it's within your same company and you want to move departments, right? Or you want to do something different, I think it matters that you make that first step and don't wait to be self-selected, right? Or not self-selected, but selected by your manager to say, hey, you should move into this thing. It's really, I think, a sign of confidence and a sign of desire. I don't normally, and I guess there's 100 people here, but don't be telling people that I don't normally check for the resume to be Stanford and Yale. And obviously I'm not at that spot in my life yet, but I don't really care about your education as much. I think education matters, it does, but I care about your grit, your tenacity, your ability to pivot, your ability to try something new and fail at it and be comfortable with getting back up. How do you work with teams? I care about your belief system, right? So our interview process is a lot different in that way. And we try to do a lot of these kinds of things so that we can put our companies out there so that people who resonate can come to us instead of us trying to, go to them. So
who wants to sit here and listen to her lovely accent all day long?
Me. I love it.
Tell us real quick where you're from and that story.
I'm from Colombia. I'm from Barranquilla. So it's like Sofia Vergara from Mother Family, Shakira, and me.
That's great.
Peggy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you asked a very good question, and it's one that I think I've just done always instinctively, but not verbally. And it's funny because I always first look when I'm getting ready to hire a new person, what I do not have in my own capacity, what I'm weak at doing. And, that is first and foremost, because you have to gather yourself with good people. And some people who are in this room have worked with me, alongside of me. But I will tell you that anyone who joins my company there's a common denominator. And I've spent my entire career and life in hospitality. And so it is a heart for service, and a heart for doing anything that comes your way, no matter why I hired you with your capability. There's been many times, and, I know a couple people in the room who've worked aside of me, and if I need to carry a tray at an event to pull it off, I will still do that. If I need to schlep boxes into a room, not that I want to do that, but I am going to do that. And so I look for people who are just really flexible with zero ego, because when they start spouting off all their accomplishments and there's this and there's that and there's, I'm bored. I'm with you on, capability, tenacity, fight, soul, those kind of things, which are harder to detect, honestly, until they're on the job and working with you several months, because you really don't know people till they're right alongside with you.
Yeah. So, my corporate friends always check me on this. So for those of you that are here, you're talking to entrepreneurs, right? You're having a conversation with entrepreneurs, and we don't have time. We don't, because at the end of the day, we're working, we're busting butt, we're hustling, and we don't have time for the person that's like, well, I work 20 hours really, but I surf the internet for the other 20, because we don't have that. We don't have that room for that. So you probably are better off in a corporate job. And that's something that we as entrepreneurs learn along the way. Like, she's super sharp, she's got a great resume, yada, 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 but 40 hours really is 20 with this person. So go work for, a so-and-so who can give you, who can afford to do that. What I think we've learned as entrepreneurs when you're a small business is that you, one, have a limited amount of time. Two, you work very closely together. I mean, when you work in a major corporation, it's not every day unless you're in the C-suite or an advisor to the C-suite where you are hanging out and dealing with the CEO. And so it's funny because I just hired my son to run one of our programs, and I had to remind my son that you are still dealing with the CEO, right? You really still are. Like, I might not be, you know, there's not a B after, you know, our annual revenue, but you're still dealing with the CEO. But what we've learned is that when you are an entrepreneur, you really do need people that are, you mentioned pivot, you got to be quick on your feet. Look what just happened with COVID. I mean, I am consumer facing everything, retail shops, restaurant, like event, like there is no way that I should still be standing when you think about it. It really requires, but I'll tell you, for me, well, let me say this. So for those of you that have those accolades and are brilliant in your own right, and you cannot put in that sort of time because you wouldn't be productive, that doesn't make you a bad leader. It just means that you probably shouldn't work for an entrepreneur, because that would stress you out to no end. We really would, because we are burning the midnight oil.
But I'll take a Yale graduate any day of the week. I mean,
oh yeah, yeah. We'll take them. But I also had to learn that everyone gets to the final destination differently. And if right now I need people that can put in 40 or 50 hours a week and be brilliant, and this Yale graduate is brilliant and she's going to get there, but she cannot give me 40 or 50 hours in order to do so, she doesn't need to work for me and I should not hire her. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with her decision or my decision. It just means that those are the sort of questions that you want to have, right? This is where we are and this is the sort of output that we need. Can you still be creative and innovative putting in that amount of your time? And if you can't, be okay with saying no, even if you're like, man, she's so bomb, I want to work there. But the reality is, I know the output that she needs, and I cannot give that and arrive to where she needs me to arrive. And then the second part, you know, when you think about, when I think about hiring people, and this is really tough, especially as we begin to grow, and I don't get to be the one that directly hires all the time, but I really do look for what's in a person's heart. Because you're gonna be responsible over others. You're gonna be responsible for engaging with clients. And I know that a lot of these other things matter, but I need to know that at the end of the day, what I am instilling at the top about how we treat people, how we respect people. I've heard nightmare stories about how people have been yelled at and things that people said. I can't bring that into the culture of my business. I can't bring people in that have biases that they don't want to check at the door. I can't, because I speak about it and I do the work all day long. But I think the most important thing is understanding what is the output, and does that output fit in an entrepreneurial culture? And if it doesn't, maybe then I am better off going for a corporate gig, even if I'm excited and what's in front of me is super fun.
So a lot of women earlier, when I asked who had more than 20 years experience in the workforce, we had quite a few hands up. So how about for these women, maybe they're looking to reinvent themselves. Maybe they're looking back on their career and the success they've had, but maybe they want something new. Anybody have anything to say to those women out there?
Well, you know, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I've done that a few times. So I went from being a jockey to being a reporter for NBC Sports, and then I'm also a strategic advisor for the Thoroughbred Safety Coalition, and I am client relations and marketing for Starlight and Star Ladies Racing. And so I would say that you reinvent yourself in the realm of what you know. So you don't reinvent yourself and say, like, you know what, I also, by the way, I do like to cook, but I'm not going to become Martha Stewart. It's not the realm of what I really know really well. And all my friends who come to my house to eat, and when I do cook, I go on RV trips with my sister and I own an RV together with my sister and our friends, and I always do all the cooking, and everybody says, you know, you need to open up a restaurant. No, I don't. I don't know anything about opening a restaurant. And I don't want to write a cookbook. It's not my passion. So I would just say, just stick within the realm of what you know, or at least what your passion is.
Very good advice. Peggy?
Yeah, my observation, and I'm 54, I'll be 55 in November, but it seems to me, and I know in my life I can speak to this clearly, every decade of a woman's life brings different things. In my 20s, I was gung-ho, energy plus. and I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I made mistake after mistake, but I didn't know because I was willing to take that chance. In my 30s, started pushing out babies, married, mortgage, you know, a little more serious. My hours were different, you know, and then in my 40s, it was this empowering me. Just really, that was when I started my company. I was empowered. I was like ready to rock again. My 50s, I feel different. So I guess what it is, when you ask that question, what would you tell a woman? I'd say, how are you feeling right now in your life? What is important to you right now that may not have been important to you, you know, in your 30s? How have you evolved and changed with your interests, your values, because if you don't look at that, you know, I'm not for making a cookie cutter statement, you know, for women who want to reinvent themselves and say, oh, you should go for this job. You should go for this job. Because I have to know, well, what is it about you? Because the older you get, the more you know yourself and thoroughly. And so I always, in fact, I'm looking at what's my 60s going to look like? That's my mindset. You know, I'm already looking at that chapter. So that's what I encourage you to assess, audit yourself.
I love that you say that. And as the hiring party, I would say that, and I have a lot of friends that, you know, are in their 50s and 60s. And there's this institutional knowledge. Like once you figure out what your thing is, like you were saying, Donna, and Peggy, once you've assessed and you're like, this is the thing that I'm really freaking good at, I've been doing for 20 plus years, you then have a leg up on everybody else, right? It doesn't matter how you know you went to school for here or there or what you've done for the last 5 years. Like no one has that institutional knowledge but you, and you bring a specific sauce to the mix that nobody else does. And what I would encourage someone that is wanting to try something new to do is to really figure out how to market that sauce, right? Like really start talking about what makes you uniquely qualified to then go and pivot that into a new business, or whether it's consulting or a new career path, using those skills that you've learned from the thing that makes you uniquely qualified. So I think that a lot of times women that are in that season tend to sort of like check themselves out of the race before even, you know, starting by saying, okay, well, no one's going to hire me because I'm now in my 50s or 60s. When I think the reality is that institutional knowledge is very much needed and welcome, at least for younger companies like mine. So don't check yourself out early. Figure out what it is that you are wanting to do. And even if you're not in your 50s or 60s, right? Even if you've only been doing something for 10 years or 5 years even, you know, that is, I think, very important to be able to figure out how to market that and put it in your resume in a way that makes people look at you not as a deficit, oh, you've been doing this for so long, but as like, oh yeah, this is really good. So
let's talk about mistakes. Anyone want to share a big mistake that they've made that ended up being a good thing?
We don't make
How long do we have up here?
Can I talk about failure in general? I mean, I wouldn't call it mistakes specifically, but I think I like to talk about failure a lot because I think it's something that we sort of have a little taboo about, and just in general, right? And I would say that I have failed in every day. I screw something up a little bit, but I think, you know, while I haven't experienced like a massive, like, okay, my business has burned down. I think that there are little things that can kind of take your wind out of your sails. You know, we talk a lot about fundraising right now. I'm in a season of fundraising for our company, and you know, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. It's about resilience. It's about who stays in the race the longest, right? Not who gets there first too. But it's about learning that it is impersonal, and that's, I think, something that's really difficult to understand as women when we make mistakes, when we screw it up, when we get told no, that we sort of deeply ingrain it to our self-worth, and it needs to be separate, right? It needs to be like your failure is something that lives outside of who you are. It does not define you. Your mistake does not define you. It is just simply a dot in a line, right? Like this is the line of your career or your life or whatever, and it's just a tiny dot, and you're gonna keep on going, right? And I think if you sort of separate from that, and you can kind of like if you're watching a movie, right? You're in the first person and you're watching the movie through your eyes, and if you can just zoom out, you'll see that it isn't that bad. It isn't going to consume you. It isn't going to end you. Just keep going and grab some bourbon and friends and and keep going.
Well, it's funny to your point, because I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but I can't think of one right now. That's how far in the rear view mirror they are. I know I have, because I've had those moments of damn. But what I will tell you, COVID, I think for everybody, changed a lot. Like it really helped me understand that I'm not in control of anything, right? So we go back to, you got a restaurant. Well, we know what COVID did to restaurants, right? Then you've got 2 boutiques, Matthews, St. Oxmoor. They're still closed right now. I'm like, nope, not yet, right? We've got to, if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right. An event, the Derby Diversity Business Summit, where you have people coming in from all over the country. Okay, Derby's postponed. Got to pivot, right? But to Natalia's point, like it's such a little blip, like we can get so caught up in the emotion of it. And then we ended up pivoting with the Derby Diversity Business Summit and doing pivot champs. And it was the best. I mean, I wasn't as stressed out. We had a broader reach. People were more engaged because they wanted something, they needed something that was fun and took all the heaviness off of them at the moment. So much so that I just had a recent wrap-up meeting and they're like, you should think about doing that again for 2021 and maybe think about doing this and doing that. So I think, in life, we are who we plant in our heads that we are. And so the way that you hold on to that mistake will completely define you. And the fact that I can't remember, and I'm sure I got some haters somewhere that'll give me a long list, like, well, I can show you where you messed up, but I don't remember them because I really sat here listening like, you know what, I don't know. I think the most important thing is what do you do when you fall? What do you do? And I'll tell you, the biggest measure of a person's character to me isn't the fall. So many people want to, sit and stew and sit on when this is why I think it happened to her. And no. Watch what happens when she gets back up. If she gets back up, a lot will tell you about where and who that woman is and where she's going and whose hands, I say whose hands are on her life by the get up. Because when the get up is fierce, it was intended for her to take that path. And so there will be some haters that will try to make it a big thing. Oh, this happened to her. Oh, I have to be, listen, let me tell you guys, the restaurant is closed. The boutiques are closed, but the comeback is getting ready to be fierce because I know whose I am. But everybody else are like, oh, this is happening. And if she wouldn't have had so many businesses and if she wouldn't have been, the comeback will be fierce. So watch her get up. Don't spend so much time watching the fall down. And for those that are spending so much time on why she fell, I need you to record their names in the book. Because once you see what the pivot is and how the pivot lands, now you know exactly whose hands you need to keep off of your canvas when you're painting your vision.
Well said.
I feel like we need a zigzag finger snap with that.
Yeah, that's very well said. Very well said.
Well, we have had an awesome conversation up here. I've got so many questions we didn't even get to. I want to open it up to you all. I'm sure that you all are sitting there with something you want to ask. So come on up, head up to these microphones right here and here. And don't be shy. Come on. I know somebody's got to be thinking something that they want to ask these ladies. My first job, I was a lifeguard. Yep.
Saving people.
Yeah. Anybody else?
if we don't have any questions right now, you guys talked about mistakes. I have a mistake that I made. And this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about creative energy and about it being inspired and in spirit are pretty much the same word at the base of it. And so anyway, I wrote a book called Inside Guide to Racing, because this was a book that I felt like needed to be out there. People needed to be able to understand horse racing better. It needed to be simplified. It needed to be in a small book that you could put in your pocketbook, that a guy could put in his back pocket, take to the races. How do I bet on the horses? What do I wear to the track? Who in the hell are these little small people and where did they come from? All that stuff. So every chapter was a standalone chapter. So if you wanted to know about where those little small jockeys came from, you could read it. If not, skip it. And it was, I felt like, well written. It came together really well. It flowed easily because it came from here. And so there's a woman named Helen Brand, God rest her soul, who's since deceased. She was the, the agent for Maya Angelou and Robert Parker, who are also both deceased. And so she read it, and she owned horses, and she said, Donna, you have to write another book. You have to write a book about, blah, blah, blah. And so the book that she wanted me to write didn't come from here. So I spent 2 years roughly, not like just in my spare time, but 2 years writing this book. And I never liked it. I never liked anything about it. And I kept going like, why don't I like this book? Like, I'm a good writer. And when I want to write, it comes out really well. And one day I realized it's not my book, it's Helen's book. And Helen's passed away, and I'm going to let that book pass away with her. And so when we talk about our inspiration and our creativity, make sure it comes from within you and not somebody standing there telling you this is what you need to do.
I agree.
Hey, while they're talking, make your way up here if you do have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Peggy.
As far as mistakes, I think that, and I still make this mistake sometimes, is I assume that people work like me, right? And instead of bringing people along and understanding how they work, I'm already down the road. I work fast, I work hard, I jump hurdles. Some of the people here, like I said, who have worked with me have seen me in action, and I think everybody works that fast. So there are times where I've been a manager or a leader of a group of people, and I have very, very high expectations, but I didn't get to their heart and make them feel ownership in what I was trying to accomplish. That was a very young mistake in leadership. An older mistake in running my own business is clients. For clients, when they ask me to do something, it's already done. In my head, like 24/7, get it done, quick turnaround. We're known for that in my company, is how fast we work, how good we work, our quality. And my clients don't move so fast, so I get frustrated. And one particular client several years ago that I remember, I was doing just an outstanding, in my opinion, job, for them, and they would give me accolades or whatever. And then we were ready to come up with the next contract, and they went dead silent. And I thought, well, wait a minute, God, they're moving so slow. I need to hear back on this contract because we've got things to do, people to see, places to go, and I really was irritated. But they were methodical people. They were strategic people. They do not move fast. I always had to prod them along. But what it turned out to be is they said, Peggy, you were so good, and I'm sorry we waited so long, because I was ready to, go, I'm walking, goodbye. Y'all aren't for me. And they said, we actually want to hire you and make you, our managing director or CEO, whatever the title was. Now, I did say no because I wanted my own company. But I was like, oh, man, that totally made me feel better. I mean, it was like, it's not that you didn't want me. It's that I did not understand you. And so, always take a little bit of a step back when you feel that frustration moment, because you may just not understand the person that you're dealing with and their style.
All right, we have a question. Thank you for being bold and not shy and coming on up here. Go for it.
So I'm wondering, and this is to anybody who wants to answer, if there was somebody specific who made a difference for you on your path as an entrepreneur, and either as a mentor or as inspiration, or they said the thing that you needed to hear, and it was like a sign or an epiphany or whatever, but just something that, what is it that inspired you or called you forward into your role, and who had a hand in that, what it looked like?
Well, I'll go first because I'll be the fastest. My mom. I mean, I had a role model I lived under her roof. So for me, I was blessed to have a role model that I looked at every day.
What's your name?
Angela.
Hey, Angela. So for me, I think it's been a lot of people. Like, I can't really like just say there's one human. I come from a long line of matriarchs, and they're all like side hustlers. So like, I mean, that's part of it. It's kind of in my DNA. And I think it's just the community in general that has gotten behind me and just, you know, say, hey, like we'll participate in what you're doing. But I will say that someone that doesn't know me but has affected me deeply is this guy. His name is Guy Raz, and he has a podcast, and it's called How I Built This. And in this podcast, he interviews entrepreneurs, and we're talking, you know, founders of things like Twitter and ClassPass and, you know, Spotify, and like the real ginormous unicorn companies, right? And what that's done for me is, as I'm listening to their stories, realizing that they're real, regular folks like me, and if they can do it, so can I. So listen to that. It's a really good podcast.
I don't want this response to take away from the many amazing women and men in my life that have just been incredible. But what inspires me is when I look back 20 years ago at the young lady who, you know, started her business with $4,000 in back child support. And every time I look at my then self, I am inspired and I am encouraged, because if she could do it with that and 2 babies, then surely now that they are up and out, this version of me can keep going. So that's my inspiration.
I think the most important mentor I had in my life was a senior vice president when I worked at a very large company, because she had the guts to tell me what I didn't want to hear. And, you know, she had the guts to give me feedback to make me better. And at the time, I remember sometimes, you know, feeling uncomfortable because she might have said, look, we need to groom you to be a better presenter. You know, we need to have you dress better in the boardroom. And, you know, I didn't know what I didn't know. But she had the guts to really not only say it, but put action behind it. And so it taught me, I used this term earlier today, being fearless on feedback. You know, feedback's like candy. You know, some of it's sour, some of it's sweet, but it's still candy.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Angela. All right, over here.
Hi, my name is Macy Spears, and I just want to say thank you all so much for everything you've said so far. But I'm a young mom, and I made a jump and taking on a new career during COVID. So it's been very interesting working from home with him. But my question is, how did you all, like early on with young children, juggle that entrepreneurship mindset with, you know, juggling the family life and everything like that?
Oh, those are the mistakes that I couldn't remember. I'm going to be honest. My kids hated my laptop. They hated it. The reality is this: if you've got the burn and you're interested in it, I'm not saying that you abandon, right? Because I did those. Now I'm like, oh, those are the mistakes. But the reality is there's no perfect way to do anything. And COVID showed us that, right? All of a sudden, the things that they're like, oh, we can never do this virtually, or we shouldn't have these calls over, you know, this shouldn't be a call, this needs to be in person. But the world kinda didn't fall apart. But we're still able to get things done. Corporations are now really considering about making some of the work from home permanent. So I go back to really what I think everyone has really said here is you've got to do what's right for you. And you cannot, you know, men, children, friends, everybody has a damn opinion. Everybody does. But But at the end of the day, ask all of them, okay, well, here, you take the baby, you do the job, and you do this. And all of a sudden, they're like, oh, whoa, I was just, you were just trying to give me advice on how to do it, but you're not willing to step into my shoes. So I'm gonna need you to exit stage left and let me do what works for me. It's really about that, because if not, everybody will have you going in a million different directions on how you should do things. And I tell people all the time, I'm grateful for when I have customers or when I have people invest in things, but I never want to be beholden to somebody because of money or because of a relationship. I cannot get to the pearly gates, and if I'm asked the question why I didn't get something done, well, because my husband wouldn't let me. No. Or my kids wouldn't let me. No. We still have a responsibility to self. And so I say, get there the way that makes it most comfortable for you.
Oof. I love that. We have responsibility to self. I'm gonna say that's probably where my mistake is too. Not specific to parenting. I'm a pretty decent mom, but a pretty good parent. But I think, and I want to ask you a follow-up question here in just a second. But I think that one advice someone gave me early on, and this next 2 years, if you have a young baby, it's gonna suck. I mean, it is. I'm sorry. It's even if you're not doing your own business, if you have a job and you have a child, it's gonna suck for the next 2 to 3 years. It's tough. Sometimes children don't sleep and blah, 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 all of these things, right? I remember, actually what little I remember, because it's such a blur, it was very like work during naps and do whatever you have to do whenever you have to do it. And I was up late teaching myself how to, do photography and the business piece and all that. So it's messy, it's ugly. Don't worry about how it's gonna look like. It's what it is. Like, just trench through it. It's mucky and whatever. But the piece that I will say, someone gave me advice, or I read it somewhere, I don't remember, but it was like, you mentioned juggling, right? We are juggling. Even now, if you have older children, whatever, or if you don't have children at all, the balls, though, that you're throwing up in the air, right? Some are glass, some are not, So some are gonna be bouncy, and sometimes the children are glass balls, and it's not like, you assign it as a person or as a thing. Work sometimes is going to be the glass ball, and a specific thing at work may be a glass ball, and then your child may be okay because maybe you have a supportive partner or a parent that can take care of them at a time, and they're gonna bounce, and that's fine. So when you have to work till late and you can't make dinner, or you can't be there for XYZ, you have to take the guilt out of the equation. And that's very difficult to achieve, right? To take that guilt of like, I'm not showing up for my kid all the time and I'm gonna miss this and that. But then on the other side of that is like, you are showing up in a way for your child that is going to do what Donna's mom did for her, right? Which is show you a completely different pathway of what it means to be a great parent and what it means to be successful. And so constantly remind yourself of that. It's important. And then my follow-up question was like, is there anything specific you're struggling with that maybe we can help point you in that direction or give you advice?
Well, if you can, you were talking about how your kids hate your laptop. That's kind of what I'm struggling with, is just keeping him separate. But he just sees me working all the time. And
how old is
he will be 2 November 6th.
Oh, okay.
So he's starting to notice if I'm busy, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So.
Macy, you are teaching him some self-reliance also. And so don't feel guilty about that. My mother was not a hands-on mother at all. My brother and sister and I pretty much raised ourselves in many ways, but she gave us core values that we took with us into our life, which was, right from wrong. You have a belief in God, or at least a higher power. And so the core values are super, super important, but the making sure that you have dinner on the table or making sure that you're his entertainment that's one of those rubber balls that you can drop if you need to.
Yeah, and also think of it as like childhood is a feeling. My therapist said that, so it must be true. Childhood, because I was struggle busing with the whole, like, my kids, I'm not really giving them the whole shebang, but childhood is a feeling. Is he or she loved? Are they loved, right? Are they cared for? Do they feel nurtured by you? You do not have to be their entertainment. You do not have to be those things. And what I will say as actionable advice, something that really worked for me was a Parents' Day Out program. It was 3 hours a day. It was my time and I got really good at being efficient and just 3 hours a day where I knew they were taken care of, and I was, busting to get everything I had to get done, and whatever a person normally gets done in an 8-hour day, I was getting done in an hour and a half because it took me 30 minutes to get back and forth. So invest in something like that for yourself, even if you don't necessarily have all the money to do it. Scrap some pennies together and just make some separation, put some boundaries on there. You take care of you first, then they get better.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, I can agree. Like, you teach them their normal, right? I know I did my MBA, single mom, and worked a full-time job and started my business. So you can do it. But yeah, so coming back to that too, like the success point. When did you feel like that pivot happened for you when you started the business? You're like burning hard. You get to that point where you're like, is it gonna make it? And then when it hits that edge, what was that for you?
Well, I've had my company for 13 years, and I think my first feeling of success was when I actually turned down business and got choosy with who I worked with. And that's a really bold statement, but that's okay. I'm a bold person. And there were, different clients. I don't advertise. I'm really word of mouth on some of the destination work that I do. And I found myself for the last 5 years or so getting choosier and choosier on who I deal with, because it was almost more important for me to identify with the client and know that we'd have a good working relationship than just take something because I needed the money. I finally got out of that, which was so invigorating. I can't tell you. And I think the next thing, and this was industry-wide, because I feel that I've really gave my life, honestly, in my career to the whiskey world, spirits world, hospitality world, and I was named the Bourbon Hall of Fame last year and Whiskey Hall of Fame in the same year. And the reason why, thank you, the reason why that was so meaningful to me is because I didn't own a distillery. I don't have my own bourbon brand. I don't work for a big company. I'm just little old me having my little old business. And to be recognized, that said so much to me. And it was gratifying. It was this feeling of satisfaction. And sometimes you don't get that too often. When you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't get that too often because you're always so working and wondering sometimes if anybody noticed. That was huge for me. And it also healed a lot of wounds from my early days of, whether it be working with men or, trials and tribulations I had as a working mother, whatever. It's like, oh, okay. I finally have that recognition in a humble way.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm gonna say two things. One, I think of success the same way I think of failure in a way. It's a dot and a line, right? And so I don't necessarily consider myself successful, like I'm experiencing success at this time or I'm not. It's the same feeling. I mean, you celebrate your accomplishment and that's good, but you gotta kind of keep moving. There's an episode of Thomas the Train that I have kids, so and he sort of like gets braggy about how he makes good decisions and he's going around whatever and he's all successful and stuff, and then of course he doesn't do so well at some point, and he's like, and I always think back at that point of like, I make good decisions, that's what I've been told, which is what he says to himself. And if you sort of have that rhetoric of like, I made it all the time, there's gonna come a point when you do screw up, because it will happen again, and it will be personal. It will feel like your worth is gonna take a hit, and I don't want that to define me. So that's kind of why I sort of structure it that way in my mind. I don't know if that's okay or not, but the other thing I will say is like, for every season of my life and for every business, I have sort of established a certain measure of success for each. So, my first one was like, I want to replace my income and be home with my child. And so I did that. So for me, that was success. For the second one is like, I want to get to, $5 million in revenue. So you get there. And for the next after that is going to be like, okay, I want to close the gender GDP gap and I want to make $150 million in year 10. So it's like, you have the power to sort of establish and assign Something that if you're that kind of person who's like, I need the tangibles and I want to check off the list, and just sort of understand that entrepreneurship itself, it's you're here in this beautiful stage with this amazingly powerful women, and then the next 2 days you're like, okay, am I going to make payroll, right? So it's like this, right? There is never like this straight line of like path. So just take it the same way you would take failure, and it sort of helps sort of digest that.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm hearing small goals and just stick with your values. Yeah, good.
What's your business?
I'm doing business consulting with customer design.
Customer design. What is
Yeah, so designing the customer experience and helping the businesses really get to know their customer, and the customer leaves with an emotion. So focusing on that emotional level.
Well, I will tell you, when you're working on outsourcing projects like that, it is difficult because most often they will see that as overhead. And when times get tough, it's the very first thing to go. And I was sharing, I don't remember who I was having the conversation with earlier. You also want to begin thinking about your business portfolio. And if you truly believe in your business model, how do you utilize your services for yourself? That was my pivot in 2016, when I had a client suddenly bring everything back in-house. And I believed in my business model. And so instead of giving my outsourced services away, and not away because I was billing for them, I began creating my own businesses and utilizing those services for myself. So you really want to also think about that. Do you have another gift, especially if things get tough, where you say, okay, well, people continue to either scale back because they don't understand the sales cycle for this to be effective. So therefore, what can I deliver and execute on where I can utilize my services, and then people will see? Because I get that all the time. People will say, like, where did you come from? Or I didn't even know that you've been in business for 20 years. And I'm like, yeah, but I was giving my services to others. I then decided to take my project management skills and use them for me.
Perfect.
But
So
one thing I
practice
will
what
add to that is I have a friend who works in Salesforce, so I'm going to give you a little secret. So when they get a new client, like what you're talking about, the first thing she does is goes to their website and starts buying stuff. She puts it in the cart just to see what's going to happen. Does she get an email? Does she get a coupon?
I do that, yes.
So you do all those things
Yes.
also. So now that a lot of businesses have closed and moved online, you want to make sure that their online customer experience is just as good.
Perfect. Thank
Good
you.
tip. Good tip. All right, we have time for one question. Kiana, who is one of our fabulous tour guides here at the museum.
Hi, I'm kind of new to the leadership role. I've probably been in my role for about 6 months, and one of my biggest personal flaws is my confidence. So I was just wondering, do you all have any advice on how to build confidence if you're just in a leadership role or new to a leadership role?
Yeah, hire Peggy. I'm kidding. No, well, it's interesting because I can tell that you're nervous right now, right? Even with you speaking. I think the main thing is share with whoever is your direct report that is an area that you would like some help, and whether or not they have someone internally or someone that's external, because that's not something that will automatically come naturally to everyone. I'll never forget with speaking, 2 things. I hated to be on camera. You couldn't pay me to be on camera. COVID, you can't get me off camera. I'm like, where do you want me to be? I'm there, right? But I also used to, when I had to speak, if I was on stage, my knee would do this the entire time. I had to master that. I used to be extremely afraid of, or I should say I enjoyed it, but I was very, very nervous. So if you can't practice at home with people that are at home to either speak in front of people that you don't know, I would also recommend talking with your employer. And I say Peggy out of jokingly, but it is something that she does do. So maybe they will bring Peggy in to work with you.
Thank you for the plug. And actually, I see many people in this room who have attended some of my personal branding classes, but to answer your question specifically on confidence, fear brings lack of confidence. And I always spell out fear as false expectations appearing real. And I wasn't always super confident. And I remember the moment that I put confidence in perspective. I wasn't curing cancer. I was not solving world peace. There was nothing burning down around me. So what couldn't I really handle? Because see, that's real serious stuff. The things I just mentioned, very serious. COVID, very serious stuff. All I'm doing is selling whiskey. And you know what I'm saying? And giving speeches to great women. And why in the world would I let that intimidate me? So that was part of it. The other secret, and I really mean, you've heard this, never let them see you sweat. See, we give ourselves away with our gestures before anybody hears us speak. And so, for you, when you walk in a room with leadership, et cetera, the way you walk into the room, your outer facial expression, these nonverbal micro messages that you give away before you speak. And so think about, no one knows what's burning down inside of you until you show them. And so my internal voice, and I hope this will become your internal voice, before you get in the room, I got this. There's nobody in that room that knows more than me about this particular subject. I was asked here for a reason. I was given this position for a reason, and now it's time to do my thing. So it's that self-talk, prepping yourself before you enter a situation. So I hope those little, I could go on and on about confidence. I find it fascinating, actually. I found it absolutely fascinating where women draw from their confidence. And sometimes it comes from a terrible situation. It's amazing. But, congratulations on your position. Own your position. They put you there for a reason.
Yeah, the other thing I want to share is there's something that also comes along once that confidence begins to develop, right? Because now when you begin to defy expectations, people want you to be in this certain box, and they're like, wait, whoa, where'd that come from? So as you're on your journey of improving your confidence and gaining that confidence, also be very, very aware, because that might also be the very reason why you're afraid to be confident, is people that may lash out because of the power that really is already baked inside of you. So be very aware of how you're going to manage, once you are more confident, those that aren't so happy that you've arrived.
Right. Just remember, they can do everything but eat you whole. I mean, really, what are they going to do to you? I always again, perspective. If the worst thing that ever happens to you in your life is that you're fired, so be it.
I wanted to say something real quick in terms of authenticity. You don't have to be, the only way to get confidence is to fully be yourself. And if that self isn't an extroverted, loud Colombian woman, then that's not who you are. And you should never try to be like me or like Tawanna or like Peggy or like Donna. Like, this is about who you are. And you are in this position because of who you are, right? And so I think, that's one thing. The second thing would be, we talked a little bit about this earlier, about confidence, like entrepreneurship, being a muscle. And so you start with working out that muscle with things that you're already good at, which is a hack for confidence, I think, in my opinion. So let's not tackle like the hardest piece that's holding you back. Let's tackle something that you're already good at. Perhaps you're good. Are you a creative person, or do you like, doing something creative in general?
I like to draw a lot.
Perfect. So let's take drawing, for example. So you're good at being creative. So we're going to put a drawing on Instagram and get a couple likes and bring our confidence up. And then the next thing may be, well, I'm going to try photography and fail at that. Like exhibit A, I fail at ceramics badly. Like, it was horrible. Like, I couldn't even get a pot to save my life. And I am like a really good creative. So that exercise in like, oh crap. And then when I finally got it, I was like, damn, I'm really good at this. And so like, it brings your confidence up just a little bit. And then the next thing is like, okay, now I'm gonna take a public speaking course. And then I'm gonna take a finance course. And then, and so on and so forth. So start with low stakes, something that you're already good at, build your muscle there, outside of like, hey, I'm going to become a leader, or I'm going to bring my confidence up, and that will help. And the last thing would be, and this is something that I have massive struggles with to still every day, is imposter syndrome, right? Which you mentioned earlier. And if you haven't heard of that, it's basically where you're like, why did they ask me here? Look at these 3 women next to me, 4 women next to me, and they're freaking amazing, and they have all these accolades, and I'm not sure why I fit in that mold, right? So, and what Peggy said, like, I am here because I deserve to be here. I was asked to be here for a reason. And so playing that real sort of like in your mind, confidence has to come from you. And you have to tell that to yourself, whether it's like post-it notes every morning, record yourself with Siri and play it as your alarm clock. I've done that. And, you know, and do those things that are going to empower you to keep going even when you fail.
Kiana, the only thing I'm going to add to that is that we all look like confident speakers, and at this point we are, but we didn't start off this way. And so when I went from being a jockey, I mean, I rode horses. That's what I knew to do. And then I started covering horse racing for NBC Sports, and the very first show I did, I came home to my husband and said, you know, I know they pay me really well for that, but it's really hard, and I don't think I want to do it anymore. And luckily he talked me off the ledge, and 20 years later, I still cover horse racing for NBC Sports, but it's not easy at first. So don't think because it's not easy for you that you're just not good at it. It wasn't easy for any of us at first. And so just keep forging ahead. And I think the best advice that I was gonna offer also that helped me the most is to pick your spots. Like when people ask me to come speak at their book club about horse racing, I don't know those women. I don't know if they love horse racing or men. So I'm not gonna go speak there because I don't really feel like that's a good spot for me. And so, you know, about, I've talked to, all of a sudden I forgot your name. Rachel, I know your name. All I could think of was Collier. But so anyway, I talked with Rachel and she said that you're very good at what you do here. So you know the Derby Museum, you know the things that you're talking about. And so you've already picked your spot. You know that you know those things. And just remember that you're not going to just start off being confident. And I think Natalia gave you a lot of good advice about how to just get better and better. I mean, I went back to college in 2002. I was 36 years old. I took a public speaking course because I wasn't good at it. And so there are those all over the place. And so just arm yourself with tools.
Shameless plug, levelupwithus.com has all kinds of classes that you can take to arm yourself and take yourself to the next level.
Yes, check Natalia's business up and take one of her classes.
Speaking of, okay, I just say one thing. Speaking of arming yourself, just remember this line. If all hell is burning down around you, put on your lipstick.
Yes, my mom says that. My mom says, don't leave the house without your lips on. All right, we have our Right to Ride exhibit opening, and I want to make sure if you want to get to that you don't miss it. We have one more question, so let's get to this quickly. And 11:40 is the time we're going to be heading upstairs for the exhibit. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Mona Jewett. I work for the Kentucky Department of Tourism, and something that's been weighing on me lately is how can I grow my female staff? And also in the tourism industry, there's a ton of young women, very talented young women. And so I would like to pick your brains on, as managers, as leaders, how do you grow young women who work for you?
I think there's two buckets I look at is what do I need from them and what do I see, you know, on a day-to-day basis where they struggle. And then it's asking them, you know, where do you need help? You know, where are you feeling, you know, if it's a confidence issue, if it is, I'd like to be a better presenter, if it's, you know, whatever it is. So that way you match the need of what you need and what they need. So I would ask them and then observe them.
There is a book by Kim Scott called Radical Candor. And it is probably one of the best assets I've had for creating culture and helping provide feedback to our staff. And specific to women really take that to heart. And I think it's a great way to sort of help them decide where they're going and align, just like Peggy is saying, where they want to go in the future. I have one-on-ones with my staff weekly, and it's only 30 minutes, but it's a really great touch base on like, what is it that you want outside of work? And it's kind of like a therapy session. So even though it's not part of your job description, really pouring that time into them really makes changes. And they will do anything for you because you're pouring that time into them. And then the other piece is like we've structured our work week so that you're working on your job that it's needs for the company 80% of the time, and 20% of the time you're working on a side project. And that I don't care what it is. It could be saving world hunger, or it could be something specific to the company. You work on whatever you think is important to you. And then you bring that innovation and that hustle into work, because one or two things is going to happen. One, they're going to realize that they can't do what it is that they truly want to do with you. And that's great. You've given them this tool set and all of these skills that they can then take to go do that thing. Or they've realized, hey, I want to do it and I want to do it here, right? Or I have learned skills that I can apply to my next career bump within the company. And again, it's all about just empowering them and giving them the time and the recognition for the things that they're doing it on a consistent basis. So Kim Scott, Radical Candor.
What's your role?
I'm the deputy commissioner for the department.
I'm sorry?
The deputy commissioner for the department.
Okay. And do you all have like any sort of annual women's leadership luncheon or anything?
We do not.
Yeah. So like, for example, like this event has been super cool, right? I think creating something like that in your space for them, getting them involved and identifying, speakers and whatnot. There's also a lot of really amazing women's groups, in Kentucky, maybe becoming a member to some of them and having the women begin to go. But if you're in a position where you can actually create your own annual event or quarterly something, I highly recommend it. I feel like the engagement piece so often gets lost when we're just, in the midst of the hustle and bustle, et cetera. I also want to say before I forget, I have to shoot out of here. So I'm not going to be able to see the exhibit. And I know all too often that people do have questions, but they're never going to come up in front of a room full of people. So if you have questions or you want to stay connected with me, you can reach me personally at tbainandco.com. That's my first initial last name, the word and then co.com. Because I want to hear them. And if I can answer them, I'd like to do so. But I really, especially on the tourism side, especially with everything that's going on, we're working with Louisville Tourism on some projects so that we can transform the way in which outsiders think about Louisville. I think there's a huge opportunity there to get the ladies involved in making a difference that way.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else have anything to add? All right. Let's give these ladies a round of applause. How awesome were they? You all were great. Thank you all so very much. And thank you to everyone here. Thank you for being with us today. We are so glad that we could have this conversation up here on stage with these amazing women. If you would like to go see the Right to Ride exhibit, head to the cafe right now, and we will make your way upstairs. Thanks again.